So this presentation here, as I shared, is called The Creation Stories of Ancient Civilizations. When I first got into this awareness in spirituality, consciousness, my first entrance actually was, my first entrance into this information was through the history. And it was the Sumerian scriptures in general. And I started, what's going on here? Here we go. All right. So I started looking for the first thought I had when I created Portal to Ascension. Well, actually, when I started waking up around 2000, 2001, was what is the origin of humanity? What is the root of all religion? And as I was looking for the root of all religion, I started going back to the oldest and oldest scriptures that I could find, right? I would read, first I started off with just the most conventional ones, the Bible, the Old Testament, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, and I was looking to see if there was a root of everything because I found that there was a lot of similarities in many of these ancient scriptures. So is there a root to all of these religions, and could I find that root story? And that began my process of looking for the origin of all things. So this presentation is kind of an homage to my original intent for everything that I've done here, which is my exploration of the origin stories. The first origin story I found, which we're going to share here in a moment, would be the Sumerian scriptures, right? And I was told, well, I heard and read back then that the Sumerian scriptures are the oldest scriptures that have ever been written by mankind, because that was right around the time that humanity started writing, right? And actually putting things down on papyrus, or in the Sumerians' case, it was stone. So I believed I'd found the origin story, and I realized that origin story permeated through many other cultures, including the Old Testament. And now in the future, which is this moment, I started realizing that there are actually older scriptures, and Egyptian scriptures and origin stories are way older than Egypt, but we've been given the wrong dating around Egypt, some of which we're definitely going to be going into this over the next 3 days. And we've been given the wrong dating of it. So actually, it was almost like a misdirection to make us think that the Sumerian scriptures were the oldest, when there are actually scriptures that seem to be older, or different texts implying origin stories of humanity. So this presentation here, now we're going to be sharing different types of origin stories, but the goal here is to look to see what are the commonalities between these ancient civilizations. Because as I was doing this presentation, I couldn't find an original story. All I could find is similarities within these stories that shows that there was some sort of commonality, and that these stories split between cultures, civilizations, millennia, all around the world. And the original intent, the original truth of how we got to this planet, what happened on this planet, was embedded in all these scriptures. So this is a great way to start out this whole conference with what is alternative archaeology? Historical records and discoveries that go against conventional timeline that we've been taught. That's pretty much what it is. There's forbidden archaeology, things like the existence of giants, modern Homo sapiens existing beyond 200,000 years ago, because I believe Lucy, which is the oldest skeletal remains of a Homo sapien that was found in Morocco, they say that I think it was 200,000 years ago. And that's another thing, like Alan and I were sharing in the beginning here. When whoever finds these skeletal remains, they then put the dating back to how old Homo sapien is, to the date that they found those remains, without completely being aware or even sharing that just because we found remains that are this old doesn't mean that this is the oldest. This is just how old we found them. So right now, it's just believed that conventionally we've been on Earth for around 200,000 years. Homo sapiens, us. Multi-humanoids coexisted. So this is another forbidden archaeology. Multiple humanoids coexisted with our species on Earth. We have been the only Homo sapien species on Earth for 40,000 years. This is also conventionally spoken, right? There may be inner Earth beings. There may be beings in the jungle of Amazon that have been sightings. All those things could exist. And there's also the Paracas skulls in Paracas, Peru, that was within the last few thousand years. That seems to be another species of humanoid, right? Hominids. So conventionally, they're accepting that we've only been on Earth as the only species of hominids for 40,000 years. So technically, within that conventional timeline, there's 160,000 years minimum of us coexisting with other hominids, right? So as we are going to be discussing here, that this is probably way more than that. We probably interacted with way more hominids. There's probably some still existing now in Earth and other places. But even the conventional timeline says that there's been 160,000 years that we existed with other, you know, species that were related to us on some level because we had the human template. And we also know that cross-species interbreeding is possible. Denisovans and Neanderthals, they're almost everybody on Earth has a percentage of Neanderthal in them, right? And if this was a different species than us, how come that's the case? Well, interspecies breeding is possible between hominids. And here are some of the here are some of the hominids that we existed with. And you can see at the bottom here, we have Homo floresiensis, we have Homo naledi, Homo luzonensis, and perhaps some late surviving Homo erectus. So 7 minimum, right? Also conventional again. There's at least been 7 other hominids that we've existed with on the earth in the last 200,000 years. Do we know about their culture? A little bit. Do we know about the way they interacted with each other, communicated? Not so much. Do we know about the intellectual capacity? Only based on speculation and cranium size and the fact that we survived. If we survived, it must have been survival of the fittest, and that's why they died off, right? That's another belief there. So is there a possibility that we existed with other hominids on this planet that were as intellectually capable as us, were able to interact, communicate with us or within their own communities? Why did I choose creation stories? All cultures and sentient civilizations from the dawn of time had some sort of creation story. Even our ancestors that did not even have written or spoken word drew images that symbolized their origin. There have been so many cultures that have been completely wiped from existence. So this made me curious. Who were these cultures? What information did they hold? And how were we connected to them? We have so many vanished civilizations as well. If we've been going through these resets, or as Alan also spoke about a little while ago, maybe some of them ascended, went off planet, went to inner Earth. If we've been going through these cataclysms even, and something occurring on the planet where the geological structure of the face of the Earth completely shifts in sometimes a very short period, sometimes longer, right? And we're barely finding, well, we found a lot of evidence, I would say, that there was a great advanced civilization 13,000 years ago, right? And the Greeks called it Atlantis. Who knows what the Atlanteans call themselves? And then Göbekli Tepe as well, right? And then Lemuria. If this has been going on and we've been going through these cycles, and these cycles are connected to our level of consciousness, is it possible that there are civilizations that existed 100,000 years ago, 200,000 years ago, 300,000 years ago, and more that we cannot have any evidence for tracking? Because one, maybe the technology and the advancements were done in a way that they didn't leave a trace, right? Maybe they didn't need technology like we did. Maybe they were telepathically and spiritually connected, that they didn't need these devices and computers and iPhones, right? Or maybe the earth has such huge resets, which we already know it has, such huge cataclysms that a lot of the remnants of these cultures have completely vanished. And then possibly, like in Egypt, maybe in Egypt, there could be remnants of not only the last cycle, but even cycles before that in that area, right? So this is why, like, is there an origin, and what is the origin? How old is the Homo sapiens species, and were there other hominids on this planet at any other times that were contributing to the experience of Earth that maybe weren't directly Homo sapiens, but maybe were some sort of other hybridization of an extraterrestrial being or some other type of evolution? And here are some, I would say, some vanished civilizations that people still have a lot of questions about. The Indus Valley civilization, the Easter Island civilization, and the Cahokia tribe of North America. And that's an artist rendition of the Cahokia tribe and the mound builders of that area. Native American tribes. We're going to go into Native American now, into a little North American first. Native American tribes from all over the world, and most notably in the Americas, have been eradicated from existence and some completely forgotten. There are 562 federally recognized indigenous tribes, but there have been many more that we don't even know existed. Scholarly estimates of the pre-Columbian population of North America have differed by millions of individuals. The lowest credible approximations propose that around 900,000 people lived in north of Rio Grande in 1492, and at the highest point, 18 million people. That's only North America. Minimums of 590 recognized in North America, unrecognized in North America. And here is just a list of just some tribes, just so we're going to stick true to the intent of this event. We're literally, this right here is a talking meditation, this presentation, because I'm going to be showing you guys names. We're not going to read all these names, but we're just going to see evidence, and we're going to pay reverence to the vanished civilizations, not in a place of victimhood, not in a place of lack, but in a place of reverence for the stories that they laid on earth that really laid the foundation for our experience now, the times that they spent here, whether they were in isolated communities or whether they were interacted with other civilizations or were our ancestors, right? This is our moment to really tune in to the vastness of the experiences that have occurred on this planet. So lost North American tribes, you can see here, there's just some names of ones that have completely been lost to time, very little information about them. And then we have here all these tribes. Here's a bunch in Canada. We have a bunch in the United States here. So what is the shared human story? And why do different spiritual texts have the same stories, right? If this culture supposedly evolved differently than this one, and this religion evolved differently than this one, and we're fighting and having a war over the fact that my religion, my God is better than your God, why is there all these similarities in these stories? Is there some commonality there? Can we focus on those commonalities rather than focus on what separates us? Now we're going to start out here with the Sumerian origin story. And the Sumerian story is obviously the one that I first got into, and I think it's a good way to start because it is really, I would say, the whole ancient alien connection, Anunnaki, is an entry point for a lot of people into this world. The earliest record of a Sumerian creation myth is called the Eridu Genesis, beginning portion of the tablet that was missing. It's part of the Numa Elish. There are multiple Sumerian creation stories. The gods An, Enlil, Enki, and Ninursunga created the Sumerians and comfortable conditions for the animal to live and procreate. Kinship then descends from heavens, and the first cities are founded: Eridu, Bad Tibira, Larak, Sipar, and Shurapak. After a missing section, we learn from that the gods have decided not to save mankind from impending flood, Zero Sudra. The king, Gudag priest, learns of this. In the later Akkadian version reported in the Atrahasis epic, Ea, which is Sumerian Enki, the god of the waters, warns the hero and gives his instructions to build an ark, right? Had to start out with this one because when I was looking at origin stories, the first one in Sumerian scriptures was the Epic of Gilgamesh. I have a whole presentation on that. If I have time to present again this weekend, this 3 days, I will. And the Epic of Gilgamesh was a flood story that where Gilgamesh visits and meets Noah on his journey. And I'm like, wait a second, this text that's talking about extraterrestrials coming from the stars and how we interacted with these beings and genetic hybridization has a story from the Old Testament that these three religions hold as their foundation for their religion, but it's coming from this text here. And that began an exploration of the realization that there's flood stories all around the world, right? That was the biggest connection that connects all of us, I would say, is the fact that so many ancient civilizations speak about a great flood that occurred. Could it be myth? Especially if some of these civilizations may not have interacted with other ones. Some of them probably were in isolation there. Some of them are talking about a flood that occurred in their area as opposed to the other area. Could it be that we experienced a collective trauma on this earth that was in the form of a flood? The epic of Gilgamesh. The gods are sending a flood to destroy mankind. Enki, god of the underworld sea of fresh water, an equivalent of Babylon, Ea, warns Ziusudra to build a large boat. The directions for of the boat are lost. When the tablet resumes, it describes the flood. A terrible storm rages for 7 days and nights. The huge boat has been tossed about on the great waters. And of course, where else does that connect? Noah's flood. God warned Noah that he was going to send a flood, told him to build an ark. He saved 2 of each type of animal. Other flood stories. Mesopotamian flood stories. Pralaya in the Hinduism, in the Vedic stories. Gunyu in Chinese mythology. Dulakion and Pyrrha in Greek mythology. Bergelmir in Norse mythology. Even the arrival of the first inhabitants of Ireland in their mythology there. So it just goes on and on and on, all around the world. Hundreds, and I've been doing research lately on collecting as many flood stories as I can from ancient civilizations, and there's hundreds of them. Antediluvian and post-diluvian. We see this narrative in many ancient cultures and religions about there being a world before and after the flood. Was this a global reset? Some of the dating in these texts can be traced around 13,000 years just by many different things, but also the astrological alignments. Some of the texts, like in the Indian scriptures, it speaks about what's happening in the stars during this time, and you can track these back to the same dates. Did civilizations exist before the flood that we have no record of? How about if there was another extinction level event before the flood? Geology studies have shown that every 13,000 years, there seems to be some sort of natural thing that occurs on the planet. And the last time it could have been an asteroid impact, could have been a solar flare, or both. And it began at the end of the last major ice age called the Younger Dryas. Was this an ET influence? Was this some sort of program reboot? Or was this some sort of pattern that the Earth goes through, that goes through certain areas within our galaxy and our solar system that maybe attracts a natural disaster every 13,000 years? Some scholars say that this was the fall of Atlantis and the beginning of Egypt. So was Atlantis wiped out by the flood? So many questions here. Now we're soon going to get into just some stories. The Antediluvian, Post-Diluvian. So Journal of Geology and Natural Disasters. This is now conventional sciences are coming up with answers that are backing metaphysics, right? And a great example of that is just the UFO ET question. Earth accelerates on its path. So this is from them, okay? Earth accelerates on its path to the ice period and slows during its back to the global warming. So basically they're saying Earth goes through an ice period and then it goes through global warming naturally. For example, slowdowns happen between 2 leveling of the planet's axis of rotation with the solar one, which means roughly 13,000 years. Oh, they're saying this cycle is around 13,000 years. 2 opposite states related to a big angular velocity of the core in the weaker energy field. When it's so far from the sun, the smaller angular velocity, but in stronger break field. When it's closer to it, can't provide linear law of these changes. It gives a chance for a turbulent event. So that was a bunch of jargon there, but this is what they're saying. It gives a chance for a turbulent event in a very short period of time when rapid slowdown decreases centrifugal forces. Basically talk about cataclysms on the Earth. What does this mean? A geophysicist from Paris Institute of Earth Physics believes that the magnetic pole shifts occurs every 13,000 to 40,000 years, still longer than previous estimates. This is what they said, Earth is adhering to some sort of cosmic pattern that attracts various forms of natural disasters. We've been placed in the solar system, in the galaxy, in a specific area that is in a pattern that has this routine occurrence that is happening. It seems to be every 13,000 years, could be longer at some points, that attracts a form of natural disasters. Here's the just a print screen of where I got this information. Four periodical natural big disasters of planet Earth during each precession cycle caused by its motion. They even go far enough to show before the flood and after the flood. If that wasn't metaphysical and ancient history, alternative history enough for you, here they're like literally showing the trajectory of the Earth and the wobble before and after the flood and what happens during the cataclysm. Earth doesn't need meteors because it has four horsemen of the apocalypse. That's their own words. Black secret of the blue planet, right? So this is only the beginning. If you would look at some of the CIA documents, the gateway process, they already know about this stuff, right? They go even deeper in how it connects to consciousness, the cycles of time, cataclysms, ancient civilizations that existed. So this information has been, at this point, vetted and confirmed. Could an industrial pre-human civilization have existed on Earth before ours? Scientific America. Okay, so now let's go to ancient Egypt, and we will do an origin story of Egypt. Before creation, according to Egyptian mythology, only darkness embraced the primeval ocean, out of which life would come. When the breath of life was strong already, the entity called Atum decided it was time for creation to begin. An island emerged from the water to support this divinity, who manifested itself in the form of Ra, the sun god of Egypt. So this here is a flood story in the beginning. Embrace the primeval ocean out of which life would come. When the breath of life was strong already, the entity came out, an island emerged, right? But it also seems to be kind of metaphoric for space and Earth. The primeval ocean is also known as space, and the Earth, the island, could also be Earth. On a primeval hill, Ra created out of himself the first gods, Shu and his partner Tefnut, who would engender other gods to complete the cosmos. Jeb, the earth god, and Nut, the sky goddess. In turn, these two birthed the principles of life, namely Osiris, the perfect being, who eventually would rule over the rest of the world, which Ra was busy creating by naming all the elements. Humankind came and happened out of the tears of Ra's eyes. Osiris was a kind and wise ruler who taught humans agriculture and civilization, with his sister slash wife Isis, who helped her husband with creativity and magic. They formed a perfect couple. Their brother Seth was strong but unruly, the opposite of his brother. In fact, Seth envied Osiris so much that he killed him so he could inherit his throne and rule Egypt the way he wanted. Seth's sister slash partner Nephthys could not stop the murder despite her love for her siblings. Killing Osiris turned out not to be such a bad idea because he was resurrected. Where do we hear this story? Through the magic of his wife, long enough to impregnate her with the son Horus, who would later avenge his father and recapture the throne of Egypt. Then Osiris departed to the other world to rule over the deceased, thus ensuring the resurrection and the cycle of life itself. So we start out with the Egyptians there in the story. We're going to be jumping over to different cultures here. And as I said, shared, this is story time. Okay, we're starting out with a little um, lesser heady information here. This is more story time of the stories of the ancient civilizations and how they believe we came about. The Druids. The ancient Druids left no written text of their own of any kind. The first are the accounts of the Greek and Roman writers who were the contemporaries. They did not have really nice things to say about the Druids, though. One topic that is not addressed in either type of source is the issue of creation myths. We have absolutely no idea how the ancient Druids or Celtic peoples viewed the creation of the universe, or what deities, spirits, or cosmic processes they may have regarded as responsible for it. The Dogon origin story. The Dogon are an African tribe that live in Mali. The creation stories are believed to go back thousands of years and some claim they may be descended from the ancient Egyptians. They believed in an egg of the world, right? This is an important component, egg of the world. We're going to see that a lot in a moment. Out in space, which is known to modern astronomers as Sirius B. However, astrological models didn't find the star until 1970, right? So how did they know about this star Sirius? How did they know? Seriously. Were they great astronomers? Did they have great technology? Were they visited by ETs? One of those have to be the reason. The creation myth of the Dogon belief begins with Amma, the god who existed before time and created the world, a being from Sirius. The egg of the world, or Sirius B, is sometimes referred to as the original placenta, which may refer to Amma's origins. Amma then creates the earth and marries her. However, the clitoris of earth is opposed to Amma's penis. Therefore, it is only after Amma removes the earth's clitoris that they are able to conceive 4 sets of twins. The twins are known as Nomo. One of the twins is referred to as Onomo, while the other is Ogo. The Nomo have the shape of a fish and requires a watery environment to live, but they also have arms and legs. Ogo removes himself from Amma's womb before he is finished in order to take over creation. With no partner of his own, he mates with the earth, and the act of incest brings disorder and chaos into the world. From ancestral union comes the first menstrual blood and the spirits of the underworld. Amma sends Onomo to earth in an ark, hello, in order to quell the chaos of Ogo. Ogo realizes that Onomo is stronger and demands Amma give him his placenta so he can be strong too. Instead, Amma uses placenta to create the sun. Then the sun turns Ogo into a fox, but he continues to wreak havoc on the world. Amma then sacrifices Onoma, his blood purifies the earth, and Amma cuts his body into pieces in order to create the stars, plants, and animals. Okay, the Dogon story. Let's do a little side note here. When I was doing research on origin stories, I realized there's 2 types of origin stories. There's the Earth stories, origin of life on Earth. There's the galactic stories, the origins of life before time, space, and in space itself, the universe. And so those are the 2 distinct ones. But then there's origin stories that use depictions of things on Earth that is actually based on stuff that happened in space, in the universe. So it's the second one, which is space-time, before space-time, all that stuff, but is using elements of Earth in order to explain that. And that seems to be what's happening in this story. This story seems to be how the creation of Earth and our physical existence came about. Even the whole genitalia symbolism in here is a representation of white hole matter, black hole matter, and the creation element of the divine feminine and the masculine forces that come together to create this physical world. And here is actually a video, and I think this will be fun to do. I'm going to play a little video here of, let me start my sound, of a Dogon mask dance, so you can kind of get an idea of their culture. So that dance was a dance to honor the ancestral realm. Something that we see quite often in many of these ancient origin stories and just in ancient scriptures in general are gods being reborn or resurrected, right? Many stories feature a god who dies and often returns to life. And it's really common in Near Eastern mythologies. And where's a Near East? Well, Palestine, Jerusalem, Israel, that's Near East. And who is the deity from that area that we hold as a resurrected being? Jesus, Yeshua, right? So it seems to be a commonality. The anthropologist Sir James Fraser compared these dying god myths in his multi-volume work, The Golden Bow. The Egyptian god Osiris and Mesopotamian god Tammuz are examples of dying gods and resurrections. And the Greek myths of Adonis has often been compared to Osiris, and the myth of Dionysus also feature death and rebirth. So here's the Greek creation story. So after this, we're going to break down some categories of creation stories after this one. In the beginning, so there's a couple things here that while I'm reading these, what I was doing, and maybe I'll just invite you to do it as well, is to try to see if these could possibly be metaphors for some advanced sciences or some advanced astronomical events occurring, or even how space-time got created in itself. Because as I'm reading this, I'm seeing there's a lot of similarities, and these seem to be metaphors explaining greater concepts that we're now understanding scientifically. In the beginning, there was darkness. The only thing in this void was Nyx, a bird with black wings. With the wind she laid a golden egg, and for ages she sat upon this egg. Finally, life began to stir in the egg, and out of it rose Eros, the god of love. One half of the shell rose into the air and became the sky, and the other became the earth, splitting of the heavens. Eros named the sky Uranus, and the earth he named Gaia. Then Eros made them fall in love. Uranus and Gaia had many children together, and eventually they had grandchildren. Some of the children became afraid of the power of the children. Kronos, in an effort to protect himself, swallowed his children when they were still infants. However, his wife Rhea hid the youngest child. She gave him a rock and wrapped him in swaddling clothes, which he swallowed, thinking it was his son. Once the child Zeus had reached manhood, his mother instructed him how to trick his father to give up his brothers and sisters. Once this was accomplished, the children fought a mighty war against their father. After much fighting, the younger generation won. With Zeus as their leader, they began to furnish Gaia with life and Uranus with stars. Overthrowing of the old gods happened here. It's my little comment. Soon the earth lacked only two things, man and animals. Zeus summoned his son Prometheus, which is forethought, and Epimetheus, afterthought. He told them to go to Earth and create men and animals and give them each a gift. Before we move on, let's break it down. First of all, notice we have a golden egg, another symbol that we see in so many different cultures, including our own mainstream science said a cosmic egg in our origin story of the Big Bang. It talks about a cosmic egg. We see the shell becoming the sky and the earth becoming the other part of the shell. We see a splitting of the heavens. The splitting of the heavens is something we also see in many different ancient texts. And then we have an overthrowing and a battle between the old gods and the new gods. Very, very common as well in many ancient cultures. We see an overthrowing of the children of the old gods, overthrowing the old gods. My theory is, because I haven't done too much into this, is that this is probably a zodiac shift. When we have zodiac shifts on Earth every couple thousand years, there is a changing of the guard, if you will, a changing of the gods. And there was a worship of the old gods, and then the new gods came into existence, which were the children of the first gods. But the new gods is an archetype of like the son conquering the father, and becoming the man, right? So it's like the archetype here is represented and could actually have physically been an actual thing that occurred of an old set of deities being overpowered by the new set of deities to make way for the new doctrine on planet Earth. Prometheus set to work form Prometheus set to work, forming men in the image of the gods. Hello, another one. And Epimetheus worked on their animals. Epimetheus worked, he gave each animal he created one of the gifts. After he had completed his work, Prometheus finally finished making men. However, when he went to see what gift to give to man, Epimetheus shamefully informed him that he had foolishly used all the gifts, gave animals all the gifts. So distressed, Prometheus decided he had to give man fire, even though gods were the only ones meant to have access to it. As the sun god rode out into the world the next morning, Prometheus took some of the fire and brought it back to man. When Zeus discovered Prometheus' deed, he became furious. He ordered his son to be chained to a mountain for a vulture to peck out his liver every day until for eternity. Then he began to devise a punishment for mankind. Another of his sons created a woman of great beauty, Pandora. Each of the gods gave her a gift. Zeus's present was curiosity and a box which he ordered her never to open. Then he presented her to Epimetheus' wife as a wife. Pandora's life with Epimetheus was happy except for the intense longing to open this box. She was convinced that because the gods and goddesses had showered so many glorious gifts upon her, that this would also be very wonderful to do. One day, when Epimetheus was gone, she opened the box, and out of the box flew all the horrors which plague the world today: pain, sickness, envy, greed. And when Pandora screamed, Epimetheus rushed home and fastened the lid shut, but it was too late. All the evils had already escaped. And I put in parentheses here, the apple from the tree. Another commonality, a different story, a different metaphor, explaining the same thing. You know, there was a cosmic egg. Out of it came chaos, confusion, corruption, duality, good, evil, bad, all of this stuff. So when Pandora opened this box, it went flooded to humanity. Where was humanity before this? Well, they were in a Garden of Eden. What does Pandora's box represent? The apple from the tree. Later that night, they had heard a voice coming from the box saying, "Let me out, I am hope." Pandora and Epimetheus released her, and she flew out into the world to give hope to humankind. Right? How beautiful is that? The duality. We had this craziness, this chaos, these evils coming out, but hope was still left. Hope begged to be let free. And they released her, and that followed humanity as well, creating an incredible dance and a long, long story of dualistic experiences on Earth. So we've been hearing quite a few times now the cosmic egg and emptiness. Several mythologies, including the one developed in China, begin with the splitting of two, another dualistic analogy of a cosmic egg. In the Chinese version, this is followed by the growth of a giant whose limbs eventually form the observable world. A dismembered giant features also in the Germanic or Norse account of creation. The Germanic version begins with a magic emptiness, one of the most characteristic features of creation stories. And why is there an emptiness in all these creation stories? Is that like a void, maybe? The Hebrews imagine a first moment when it's all void, with darkness on the face of the deep. In Greece, the story begins with chaos, meaning a gaping emptiness that was filled with this. In Egypt and Mesopotamia, a boundless ocean sets the primal scene. Ancient Egyptians saw the cosmic egg as the soul of the primeval waters out of which all creation rose. In one story, the sun god emerged from the primeval mound, itself a version of the cosmic egg resting in the original sea. One Chinese creation myth describes a huge primordial egg containing the primal being, the giant Pangu. The egg broke, Pangu escaped into chaos, and the many opposites, the yin and yang, began into creation. The Satapatha Brahmana of India contains the story of the desire of the original maternal waters, desire to reproduce. Through a series of prolonged rituals, the waters became so hot that they gave birth to a golden egg. Eventually, after about the time it takes for a woman or a cow to give birth, the creator emerged from the egg and creation took place. Again, the egg splits, the egg opens, creation occurs, chaos occurs, duality occurs, experiences occurs, physicality occurs, the yin and yang becomes into existence. Within this egg typically resides a divine being who literally creates himself from nothing, creating himself from the void, right? This creator then goes on to form the material universe. The Pelagian myth of creation in lays the world, Uranome lays the world egg on the waters of chaos and orders a cosmic snake, Ophion, to encircle it until it hatched the world itself. And in Finnish epic, the world is created from the fragments of an egg laid by a duck, another duck, on the knee of the primordial sea goddess. And in Zoroastrian tradition, the Almighty God created the world from chaos. He gathered the turbulent material and formed it into a greater egg. From the upper part of his shell, he formed the sky. From the lower half, he formed the earth. He then filled the lower part of the shell with primeval waters and set a flat earthen disk on top of it. So there we go. Cosmic egg stories everywhere. It's interesting. There's also a very interesting component here, which is the chaos aspect of it all. That inside the cosmic egg represents singularity, stillness, the void, the nothingness, literal peace, just complete serenity and void and emptiness. But there is something sitting within it. There's this force, the singularity force sitting in it, wishing to experience itself infinitely. It cracks open. The experience begins, and the experience becomes chaos, duality, all the experiences. Very similar to what we also spoke, what Jamie Janover spoke about on a panel yesterday on YouTube, is the eye of the storm compared to the storm, the stillness in the middle is literally what is holding together the chaos. They work together. The stillness and the chaos are in balance with each other. And without that stillness, there is no chaos. And a great example would be the black hole in the center of our galaxy. It's a black hole. It represents the void, the stillness, the singularity. But what's going on around it? The chaos of creation. But the chaos of creation seems to be very chaotic. But as we are now realizing, it's very rhythmic, very harmonious, in sync with each other patterns. Things are just going in and out in the way that they're supposed to go. But it's just a freedom of expression, the chaos. I'm not going to go all over these, but we have Slavic mythology, cosmic egg, Polynesian Tahitians, the egg again broke out and made part of the egg the sky. Dogon myth, again, an egg. In the Japanese mythology, creation begins with the world as a chaotic, formless mass. Then, and this is so interesting because the world, Japanese mythology one, I'm pretty much positive that it's speaking about the way the universe got created. Creation begins with the world as chaotic and formless mass, infinite singularity, formless infinite singularity. Then an indefinable sound filled the void, setting the particles in motion, which form into an egg. Sound, the other component. Of course, the Hindu scriptures as well talk about the egg. And now let's get into a generalized metaphysical egg story. And let's get into the actual story of mainstream science around the world, the Big Bang story. So metaphysics first. The cosmic egg represents potentiality. It's the pre-creation held within the chaos, waiting to become the cosmos. This duality then sets up a conflict found throughout the world mythology, the duality of chaos and order, good and evil, light and dark, love and hate. And mainstream science, cosmological models maintain that 13.8 billion years ago, the entire mass of the universe was compressed into a gravitational singularity, the so-called cosmic egg, from which it expanded to its current state following the Big Bang. Can you guys see here that this scientific conventional story is the exact same story as all the other ones, except it's just pure facts without the metaphors, right? And if you look at the metaphysical one compared to the scientific one, it's just different parts of the brain we're using here. Metaphysics is the feminine creation aspect of it all. It's telling you what it meant for that. Mainstream science, infinite singularity. It was a cosmic egg. It split open. All this matter and energy came out. Everything got created in the universe. Metaphysics, infinite singularity inside a cosmic egg. It split open. All potential came out of it, creating chaos, order, good, evil, light, dark, love, hate. The singularity formed the duality. Moving over now to sound. As we're going through categories here of different ancient story in these ancient scriptures, one thing that we cannot deny is the prevalent use of sound in all these stories. What is it? Why? Are we all vibration? Are we all sound? This one right here is actually one of my favorite quotes from the Laguna Pueblo Native American creation story. Just, I'm not going to, maybe I will break it down, but when I read this to you, think about what it means scientifically. In the center of the universe, she sang. In the midst of the water, she sang. In the midst of heaven, she sang. In the center, she sang. Her singing made all the worlds of the spirits, the worlds of the people, the worlds of the creatures, the worlds of the gods. In this way, she separated the quarters. Singing, she separated. Upon the face of heaven, she placed her song. Upon the face of water, she placed her song. Thus, she placed her song. Thus, she placed her will. Thus, she wove her design. Thus sang the spider. Thus, she thought. Such a beautiful, beautiful origin story. In the center of the universe, the infinite singularity was singing. The sound, the vibration wanted to express itself. In the midst of the waters, many of these ancient civilization stories, when they say waters, they're talking about space, right? In that, which is why the Navy in the U.S. has has jurisdiction in space, because even navies in the world consider space the second ocean. In the midst of the heavens, she said, in the midst of the universe, she's singing to us. In the center of it all, that vibration made all the worlds. All the worlds. The vibration made the worlds of the spirits. The vibration made the worlds of the people. The vibration made the worlds of creatures. And the vibration made the world of the gods. Wasn't God here before? Well, this is gods with a lowercase g. In this way, she separated the quarters, singularity to duality. The vibration is everywhere. And in the ending, thus wove her design. Thus sang the spider, sacred geometry, web of life, the spider web, the fractalization from the higher dimensions till now. And thus she thought, oh my God, this is probably the best quote ever. Thus she thought, the thought manifested reality. What if, could I be something other than I already am? Can I experience myself other than the singularity into infinite possibilities? Even the Australian Aborigines speak of three sacred songs. The song paths sung by the primordial ancestor spirits who walk across the landscape, singing its lands into existence. We have the six aspects of creation, the six aspects of Om, the six solfeggio tones, the cis aspects of the all-seeing eye of Horus, which is a cross intersection of the pineal gland. And maybe you've heard this one before, or maybe you heard something like it. In the beginning was Brahman, with whom was the Word, and the Word is Brahman. Krishna Ayurveda. Well, it sounds very much like in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, right? Too similar to not be the similar. So that's another one there. Wait a second. Did you just take that text from ancient Hindu scriptures? That goes in a whole rabbit hole of Yeshua's time in India, probably, but we're not going to go there. And that whole time in the beginning, I'm sorry, not Yeshua's time in India, but the Old Testament and was written before Yeshua. So the Old Testament and its influences from India, or maybe some other shared older ancient scripture that was passed down to multiple cultures. So now in the Bible, John 1:1, we have one of the most famous stanzas. And let's break this one down. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. So this is an origin story. And the Word was God. So what is the Word? I've been hearing some Christian people say the Word is Jesus, but there is actually no evidence in the scripture that says it was Jesus at all. But the Word literally is the sound. In the beginning was the sound, and the sound, which is a word, was God and was with God. Well, now this is so incredibly beautiful. The way they do this stuff is amazing. What an incredible metaphor for paradox. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. That's contradicting. How can the Word be God and with God at the same time? Because they're introducing beautifully the paradox. He was with God in the beginning. Who was he? Now that's where people start saying, oh, Jesus. The Word was with God in the beginning. The sound was with God in the beginning. Through sound, all things were made. Without sound, nothing was made that has been made. In him was life. We're still talking about the word here, sound. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. Sound created light. Light is sped up sound. The vibration became the light. This is a scientific equation. In sound was life, and that sound was the life of all mankind, the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. The light shines in the darkness, but the darkness will not overcome it. They work together in perfect duality. How beautiful is that? So as we continue our journey around the planet, jumping from civilization to civilization, we're now at the Indus Valley civilization, which holds really huge place in my heart because I probably have ancestors from there because I'm from North India. And when I first got into all this information, I wanted to find not only the root of all religion, but what's the root of Neil? How did I become me? Where did I come from? How is it that I'm an Indian? I'm an Indian kid raised in England, living in the U.S. from North India. What is my migration routes? How did I get here? That's so incredible just to even imagine how I have people from all over the world. And I wanted to see could I find and track back my lineage, because my family didn't really tell me too much about my heritage, my grandparents, my great grandparents beyond that. And there's not too much there. I'm sure if I go to India, I could find out, but they didn't tell me too much. So I was very curious to see how far back I could go. And I get a little extreme sometimes. So I went really far, like 7,000 years back, just to see, well, who seeded India, right? Looks like it wasn't ruled by one person. So Indus Valley Civilization 101 here. It looks like it wasn't ruled by one person. There were several rulers or kings at the same time. An alliance under one umbrella, but without any ruler taking ownership. This civilization was probably one of the greatest and most biggest civilizations in the history of the world, like one local area. They had no distinct ruler. There was all facilitators, all people that helped with everything and had responsibilities, but there was no ruler. Not everyone was rich, but everyone got enough and that they needed and didn't go without. No poverty, no evidence of palaces or temples. There was no like homage to a specific deity. There was no palace for a ruler that was trying to be like, look at me, how great I am. There was a lack of weapons. Couldn't find any evidence of weapons. And it seems that there could have been a possible migration of many ancient cultures to this area. And there's evidence of Elamite genetics from Mesopotamia. So my theory, do I have a map here? No, I don't. Do I have a map? No. Okay. So my theory is Mesopotamians, Iranian farmers in the mountains, um, North Eurasian steppe dwellers that some people call it Aryans, Kushites from the land of Kush, south of Egypt, all migrated, and a natural population in the Spice civilization, all migrated within a few hundred years of each other to that area and created the civilization. It was a combination of many ancient cultures coming together, right? And the reason for that is we were going from one Yuga cycle to a lower Yuga cycle. And as we were going into this lower Yuga cycle, this age, Yuga cycle is basically like golden age, bronze age, silver age, dark ages, right? Supposedly we're in the dark ages, shifting out of it. What seems to happen when we fall from one age to a lower age is that there's a group of tribes around the world that want to hold on to the ways of the old age. And they go and seem to find each other on the planet. And they create a model society based on the old ways. And my belief is Indus Valley civilization was a Dwarpa Yuga civilization, pre-Yuga cycle. And this was at the fall of the Dwarpa, but basically they came there and they tried to implement these same policies where everybody's a sovereign being, all people are taken care of, no distinct rulers and power structures that could be corrupted. All those elements happen. They were great at managing water, and the monsoon would flood the valley every year. Stone cylinder contracts found similar to those in Mesopotamia. So there's a lot of similarities to those cultures that I shared. So it seems like people had come in from those areas and shared with them. There've been over 2,000 of those stone cylinder contracts that have been found. Gonna skip over that part. That's just a city. Dolavera is a city in the Indus Valley civilization. So because of time, I'm just going to leave it here for a second. You can read it. I'm going to leave it here. So on the replay, if you like, you can go deeper into that city. Let's see how we're going to close this out. So there's a lot left in this presentation, as you can see. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just close out in a couple of minutes here because I don't have time. But I will have time for the rest of the present 3 days to go through more of it. So we're going to end it on kind of like a cool note here. And we'll do it like this. Extraterrestrials and creation stories. Or star beings, interdimensional travelers, other humanoids. Many creation stories speak of beings that are not from this planet. Is this myth, or could these actually be beings that have existed? Greek, Hindu, Egyptian, Dogon, indigenous tribes in the Americas, Celtic, Norse, Hopi, all these cultures speak about beings visiting them. Evidence suggests that monotheistic cultures even come from belief systems that had multiple gods, right? Christianity is not originally from a monotheistic religion. It's from Judaism. Judaism was pagan 700 BCE, right? Paul Wallace is on later today. We'll have that conversation with him. I'm interviewing him. We'll talk about when Judaism was pagan. And could these be extraterrestrials? To many people, these beings actually exist, and they're literal physical gods. In this concept, it's easier to digest. Is this concept easier to digest than the possibility of alien life? So is it easier to digest logically, right? Maybe even spiritually, that we have actual gods visiting our planet and doing certain things, manipulating our genetics, telling us information, landing in different craft? Or is it kind of easier to digest that it could be extraterrestrials? Have we been isolated on this planet for so long that we're too indoctrinated in the concept of a god that we do not see blatant evidence that these gods and angels could be more technologically advanced beings? The Hindu scriptures, especially the Mahabharata, shows depictions of celestial crafts and chariots with lightning bolts coming out of them. And I don't. I mean, I guess I kind of feel maybe I know God on some level, but I don't really know God. But I would think from my own belief system that God wouldn't be here on this planet engaging in huge wars and battles with other gods and with humanity and wiping them out and then flooding them, right? If God is all benevolent, all loving, why would God be doing all these things? And even in the Hindu scriptures, the whole entire one of the most peaceful religions in the world, the whole entire spiritual main text, the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita, which is the Bible of the Hindu scriptures, is one chapter in the Mahabharata, is based on an epic battle that happened in the skies and in space on Earth between these different warring factions. And Krishna was on one of the sides. So, not to say that they weren't spiritually connected, weren't our ancestors, weren't doing some trying to like fight for good or whatever was happening. I don't know, but just to feel that if we're talking about God, source, consciousness, the one that wanted to experience itself infinitely, would it be easier for us to think that maybe these beings, including the God that flooded the earth and gave Noah told Noah to build an ark, could actually be other beings, not actually source itself? Even though paradoxically, I guess we're all source, right? So UFOs and ancient art, little art show here to close this out. Renaissance art, Mayan art. It's a very interesting one, huh? The root of all religion, the origin of humankind. This is the reason I really began doing what I do now and why Portal to Ascension was created. If you look at all these similarities, yet we speak of all our differences more than what unites us, right? The reason for this presentation is just to show you, like, and give you some. I know you guys already know this, but give you some more factual based information on why we're so connected, right? Look at all these stories that we've interchanged with each other, but we always focus on our differences because that's what our institutions that are controlling want us to believe. They want us to basically divide and conquer is the name of the game. So by showing you why you're not the same as the other person, that's the way that they can control. However, as I like to say, we have more in common than with our neighbors that have a different religion and faith and everything than we do than those that are sitting behind thrones and sitting behind White Houses that claim to be our rulers. The origin of humanity can tell us so much about the scientific explanation as well as spiritual story of a universe. There hasn't been enough people studying what the science is. We did a little today, but if you can study these things and look at the science of what they're actually explaining through metaphors, we could probably figure out things we haven't even figured out yet. After actively beginning this search in 2000, the more I explore, the more complex and incredible that story becomes. I've now finally, guys, given up the pursuit to find the root of all religion and the origin of where we come from. And now I embrace the diversity of our unique experience. But with that being said, I had to create my own origin story. So here's the origin story according to Neil. After reading hundreds of origin stories and categorizing and looking at similarities and all the stuff and spending some time recently looking at all these flood narratives, I came up with an origin story that pulled in as many similarities from all these scriptures that I got the opportunity to read and put this together. So this will be the closing statement, if you will. In the beginning, even though there was never a true beginning, time, space, and matter did not exist. All that was void and emptiness. Within this paradoxical emptiness manifested a cosmic egg, a singularity of infinite mass and energy. This egg contained boundless potential. When this egg cracked, it released and expanded in all directions, creating a frequency, a vibration, inspiring progression and movement that eventually became space and time. Independent frequencies formed while remaining connected to the original source vibration. The vibration continued to expand in fractal geometrical complexities as a never-ending spiderweb. Ultimately, physicality and matter coalesced into shapes, forms, nebulae, galaxies, suns, planetary bodies that cultivated and set the stage for sentient life to emerge in various forms of experiences, beginning with the higher dimensional non-physical to the eventual physical realms. These beings began imposing their own will in creation that was sparked by the cosmic egg, allowing the source to experience itself in every possible outcome through all that is, was, and will ever be. All right, thank you all so much for tuning in for that presentation.